Got it. Here's your script with all numerics removed and some words replaced with similar meaning while keeping the style intact. The first time a Zelthrak saw a human eating a sandwich before a battlefield slaughter, it triggered a full-blown, diplomatic incident. Commander Vars had been sure the humans were an inferior species. Their bodies looked soft, almost lazy, like organisms designed for comfort, not war. But the Council demanded first-hand observations before launching a cleansing strike, and Var had reluctantly agreed to personally inspect Earth's defenses. He hadn't expected to find men lounging around their bunkers playing cards, laughing at jokes, and most disturbingly, calmly munching on sandwiches right before battle. Vars mistook it for incompetence. His mistake would become the last one he ever made. The Zelthra believed war required ritual chanting, body painting, rousing speeches about honor. Humans did none of that. They cracked jokes about body odor, slapped each other on the back, and argued about who had the worst rations. Some of them even napped in the grass with their boots still on. Var filed his report in disgust. This species is incapable of taking war seriously. That night the humans attacked. It wasn't a neat, organized assault like Zelthrak tactics. It was chaos. Improvised, furious soldiers who had been sleeping just moments earlier now moved like wolves through the enemy's defenses using dirt, broken machinery, even the corpses of fallen enemies to gain every inch of advantage. They fought in complete silence except for brief barked orders, and their expressions were terrifying. Not because they were enraged, but because they looked almost bored. Private Merrick, a young man from a crumbling steel town, shot 3 Zelthrak warriors while his sandwich was still in his mouth. When he finally ducked behind a smoking ruin to reload, he muttered around the bread, "This better be over before lunch." The following day, the Zelthrak generals convened in horror. They had underestimated humanity's greatest evolutionary trick, their ability to disconnect emotion from violence. Other species fought for glory. Humans fought because someone had taken away their quiet afternoon. Vars sat stone-faced as recordings from the battlefield played out. He saw men diving onto grenades without hesitation to save comrades. He saw soldiers craft lethal traps out of rusted metal and wire, within minutes of being cornered. He saw them strip weapons from dead enemies and turn them back against their owners, without a second thought. One scene haunted Var most. A platoon of humans, backs against a cliff, low on ammunition, bleeding from a dozen wounds and laughing, genuinely laughing. It was not madness. It was the kind of laughter that said, "If this is it, then so be it, but we'll make sure you're coming with us." The Zelthrak had no words for this, their minds recoiled from it. When Vars requested a full psychological analysis of the species, his advisors returned with a single line scrolled across a data pad. They fight hardest when they have nothing left to lose. In desperation, the Council called for a more thorough study. They needed to understand what transformed a seemingly fragile human into a ruthless killer. They dispatched hundreds of covert observation teams across Earth. Their orders were simple: blend in, study the humans, and find the catalyst. Some Zelthra posed as foreign exchange students, some opened small businesses, some even became taxi drivers, taking in every scrap of human behavior they could find. At first, the reports were confusing. Humans were sentimental, easily distracted by jokes, obsessed with trivial rituals like celebrating the anniversary of a random battle they had won centuries ago. Then patterns began to emerge. The first thing to set a human off wasn't survival, it was betrayal. Humans could survive poverty, disaster, war, but betrayal ignited something deeper than any survival instinct. Stories poured in of quiet men who worked dead-end jobs without complaint until someone they trusted wronged them. Then they moved with an intensity that stunned even their own kind. These betrayals didn't just enrage them, they focused them. The second catalyst was loss, not their own suffering, but the suffering of someone they cared about. Family, friends, comrades. Humanity's most dangerous warriors were not forged by personal ambition, but by grief, loyalty, and the primal instinct to protect others, even after those others were gone. Finally, and most disturbingly, humans possessed an ability to commit total violence once they mentally detached from their emotions. A human might mourn his enemy after a battle, even pity him. But while the fight raged, he became pure calculation. They joked through fear. They laughed through pain. They solved problems as if they were playing a simple board game, even if the problems involved burning cities and oceans of blood. Var himself saw it firsthand during the third assault on New Kyoto. The Zelthra had surrounded a human outpost, cutting off all supply lines for weeks. The humans endured hunger, disease, and shelling. Then, without warning, the outpost erupted outward in a savage counterattack. Men who hadn't eaten a full meal in days sprinted into battle without helmets, faces smeared with ash, wielding broken rifles as clubs. They carved a path through the Zelthrak ranks, moving with an eerie, silent coordination. In the center of the charge was a grizzled sergeant known only as Briggs. He wielded a captured plasma cannon like a battering ram, swinging it into enemy lines with such force that even the Zelthrak war machines buckled. Every time Briggs smashed through another rank, he shouted the same thing over and over: "You shouldn't have made me miss my son's birthday." It was not just anger, it was personal. The Zelthra learned that day that humanity did not fight because they enjoyed it. They fought because someone made them, and when that happened, every petty grudge, every heartbreak, every broken promise became fuel for a fire that no enemy could hope to extinguish. On the orbiting flagship, Vars stood before the Council of Elders. His body was battered, his pride shattered. "There is no ritual that binds them," he said bitterly. "No tradition we can exploit. They do not need honor or permission. Hurt them or worse, hurt those they love, and they will stop at nothing to destroy you." The council murmured uneasily. One of the elders, a brittle old tactician named Craze, leaned forward. "Then we shall appeal to their reason. Surely they must desire survival over destruction." Vars shook his head. "They only desire survival until someone makes them angry enough to forget fear." The council convened an emergency session. It was clear that traditional conquest was impossible. Even if they slaughtered millions, the remainder would rise with even greater fury. Worse, the humans did not seem to distinguish between soldiers and civilians. When provoked, a farmer with a broken rake could become just as lethal as a trained Marine if given cause. The Zelthra debated retreat. They debated negotiation. Some whispered about simply leaving the humans alone as one might back away from a snarling animal in the dark. But pride held them back, so they tried one final tactic: show overwhelming force. They assembled the dread fleet, 100 warships bristling with weapons from 1,000 conquered worlds. The plan was simple: appear in Earth's orbit, demonstrate undeniable superiority, and demand surrender. Before a single shot was fired, the fleet arrived over Earth in the dead of night. Transmission towers buzzed to life. Every screen on the Yam planet flickered with the same message: surrender and live for a few minutes. There was silence. Then Earth answered. The humans did not send politicians. They did not send ambassadors. They sent a man named Captain Roar. Roar appeared on every screen, a battered leather jacket thrown over his uniform, arms folded, a faint smile on his face. He said only 9 words before cutting the transmission. "You're not the first to try. You won't be the last." And behind him, framed in the camera's view, the skies began to darken, not with storm clouds, but with ships. Hundreds of them, thousands, and every one of them built by humans. Not sleek, elegant vessels like the Zelthra favored, but ugly, brutal things bristling with improvised armor, weapons stitched together from a dozen different technologies, engines roaring with raw, violent energy. They hadn't built a fleet to win. They had built a fleet to make sure that if they lost, they would drag the enemy to hell with them. The dread fleet did not. Turned, the Leviathan moved like a slow, unstoppable storm. Even at full thrust, its engines produced only a steady crawl. But it didn't matter. It wasn't built for speed, it was built for destruction. The first shot from its coil gun cracked space itself, firing a chunk of asteroid the size of a shuttle directly through the hull of the Zelthrak supercarrier, Ukerva. The mighty flagship split apart like paper in a hurricane, its fragments scattering into the void. Panic rippled through the remnants. of the dread fleet ships broke formation. Turning to flee orders from Kurvak shrieked across the command network, but discipline collapsed. It was every ship for itself now, but retreat wasn't survival. The humans had planned for that too hidden. Behind Earth's moon, a second wave of human destroyers sprang from concealment, smaller, faster, perfectly positioned to intercept any fleeing vessels. They weren't just chasing victory, they were sealing it on board the Defiance. Captain Rohr leaned, forward eyes sharp, send the message. Yuri said Sergeant Collins tapped the console across every communication channel, across every frequency. The Zelthrak used a single human phrase echoed. You started this, we'll finish it. The Leviathan continued, its advance indifferent to the chaos around it. Its secondary batteries fired in coordinated salvos, punching holes through enemy cruisers and bombardment platforms alike. No XL Thrak weapon could breach its armor. No Zelthra tactic could slow its march on the Aelthra flagship. Kurvak clutched the armrests of his throne. He refused to flee. He would go down with his ship if necessary, but he would not run from creatures he once considered primitive. He issued a last order ram the Leviathan. If the humans wanted total war, they would pay for every inch his vessel. The Karsek burned its engines at maximum output, hurtling toward the human dread. Not its hull glowed red-hot from atmospheric friction, plating buckling from the stress on the Defiance. Rohr watched the suicidal maneuver unfold. He gave no orders to evade. Instead, he waited when the Kars was within 2,000 meters. The Leviathan responded, not with its main gun, not with missiles. The forward bay doors opened, and from within poured a swarm of smaller human ships, gunboats, dropships. Fighters all repurposed, repainted, jury-rigged to carry explosives and kinetic weapons. They surged like a wave of steel and fire, battering the Kars from all sides. The Zelthra ship never made it. It broke apart mid-charge, torn open from 1,000 coordinated strikes. Debris fanned outward in a burning halo around the Leviathan, raining down into Earth's atmosphere, where they lit the skies like a mockery of falling stars. Kurbak's death scream never reached his fleet. When the flagship's core detonated, the remaining Zelthri forces abandoned all hope. Some fled into deep space, silent and dark, hoping to vanish beyond human reach. Others surrendered outright, transmitting desperate pleas across open channels. Humanity gave no pursuit to the cowards. Earth's defenders regrouped, letting the survivors limp away into the void to carry home a single immutable truth. You do not invade Earth. You do not provoke humanity. You certainly do not mistake their kindness, their laughter, their lazy afternoons for weakness on board the Defiance. Rohr finally leaned back, the tension easing from his shoulders around him. The bridge crew erupted into cheers, backslaps, and howls of victory. Someone opened a bottle of contraband whiskey, passing it around with reckless joy. Rohr allowed himself a rare smile. Well, he said, taking the cigar from his pocket and lighting it at last. Guess it's lunchtime down on Earth. The skies cleared. Humanity, scarred but unbroken, looked up and knew one thing beyond any doubt: they had survived. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because when pushed they became something far more terrifying than any invader could understand. They became human, and there was no force in the galaxy more dangerous than